written according to Islamic Qusiyya, then the Texas court will accept it if you followed the rules as far as making sure that it's witnessed, making sure that it's signed. If it's a handwritten will is valid in the state of Texas. It's called a holographic will. So if you don't have something, go home, write it out. My name is Dubaba Abdullah. This is my last will and testament. I am an unmarried woman. I have 2 children, Yusuf and Ayat. I want my assets to go according to Sharia. So that means my parents receive 1/3, 1/6, 1/6, and the rest goes to my children who receive, my son receives double what my daughter receives. If there's any huququllah, go ahead and pay it, telling my trustee, this is who I'm appointing as the executor of my will, and this is who I want to appoint as guardian of my children. That a handwritten will does not need to be notarized, no. It just needs to be written and signed. In your handwriting, not typed. 100% handwritten. No witnesses, nothing else.
Just the handwritten will, that's it.
Just a handwritten will is going to be valid. The only problem with the handwritten will is that your family will have to go to court to make sure the assets are moved out of my name into my family's name. And the ways to avoid that, there's 2 ways. One is a trust, and the other one is using non-probate transfers. And we'll talk about both of those quickly right now in the next 15 minutes. So what is a trust? Yes?
Who's this?
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah.
Yeah.
The question that I said, the continuation that does it any time it expires, or is there anything like that?
As long as it is handwritten by me and signed by me, it does not expire. It is valid for the duration. No witnesses, nothing, just handwritten, signed, and dated. I do not recommend it. That is a stopgap measure for today or for the next month until you can do something else. I don't recommend it because your family will have to go through court and go through probate, that long system that we talked about, in order to get assets put into their name. It's usually not a problem if husband and wife own everything jointly. It doesn't have as big of an effect because usually wife or husband will inherit everything because everything is owned jointly. The problem becomes when both spouses pass, then your kids will have to go through the court system to get the assets moved from your name into the name of them or whoever you've appointed. So what is a trust? I see questions. I'm going to hold off on them for let me just get through this so we can finish. And then after Isha, if anyone wants to stay and ask questions, I'm happy to remain and answer any questions. So a trust is a legal entity that I create for many purposes, and there's many different types of trusts. It's designed to ensure that my assets are managed and are distributed to the beneficiaries in accordance to the terms of my trust. There are 3 different parties that are involved. One is the grantor or the trustor, and that is the person who's creating the trust. There is a trustee, and that is the person who is managing the assets. And then there are beneficiaries, and those are who receives benefit from this trust. They can all be the same people. Like I am the trustor of my trust. I am the trustee, meaning I manage all of my assets that I've already put into the trust. And I'm a beneficiary, meaning I can use anything I want in my trust for myself or whoever else I want to, right? Upon my death, my children and my parents are the beneficiaries of my trust, right? And they will each receive their share as I've written them out according to Sharia. So the next slide has just sort of a graphic of this. And so at the top, you see all the different types of assets. You've got your cash, your mutual funds, your real estate, your stocks, your cash, like all of your assets. And I, as the grantor or the trustor, have written out my trust that details out who inherits, when they inherit, what is my wasiyya portion, right? Who is, like, if I have any huququllah that are missing, I need those to be paid out first and foremost before any of my charity, right? I don't want to owe anything to Allah or owe anything to people before I meet Allah. And then after that, everything gets divided again according to the laws of Allah. and it is managed by the trustee for the benefit of my children, or my parents get initial distributions, and then the rest of it is held in trust for my children, and they inherit at specific intervals that I've written out. So at 21, they receive income. At 25, they receive 1/3, no questions asked. At 30, they receive 1/3. At 35, they get the rest. Before that, if they need access to their inheritance, they have to go talk to an adult. They have to go talk to someone who has life experience, who can guide them and tell them, Habibi, a $50,000 car doesn't make sense when you're 17. How about we try and get you, an $8,000 car, you can drive that for the next 10 years, and then we can use this money to pay for school, or to pay for a down payment for a house, or to pay for a wedding, right? A modest wedding, to pay for the things that your mother would have wanted this money to go towards. So there are many different types of trust. If you go to the next slide, you have revocable trust or living trust. Those are usually synonymous with revocable trust. And that is created by me, and I also serve as a trustee, and it can be changed or modified or altered at any point in time. You have irrevocable trusts, which is created by me, but it cannot be changed or altered or modified or revoked. Once the assets are put there, they will be managed by the trustee in strict accordance to the terms. And then there's testamentary trust, which I can write in a will, right? So a lot of times if I've got older clients and I'm like, we only need a will for you, I'll do a testamentary trust in case, la samahullah, something happens to their adult children and their grandchildren are inheriting, that their grandchildren receive the funds in a trust. So again, the benefits of a trust is, again, a will goes through probate, which is a public court hearing, which takes time. It takes anywhere from 9 months to 2 years. It takes money because you have to hire an attorney to go through probate, and the attorney's fees are going to be more than you would pay to set up a trust. You're going to pay anywhere from $5,000 to $10,000 to go through probate, where to create a trust and to create it properly will cost you maybe around $5,000, maybe $4,000, maybe $3,000, maybe $6,000, depending on the circumstances and what your family needs are. And so it does save you money, and it allows you to ensure that everyone is taken care of. So for example, you can, if your parents are living in your house, you can write in the trust that this house is going to go to my children, but my parents receive a life estate, meaning that while they're alive, my parents can remain living in my house, rent-free, mortgage-free, for the duration of their lives. I can make sure that my daughters are taken care of and that they also have a house to live in for the duration of their life. And then when they either are deceased or when they decide they want to move out, at that point it can be like her brother can receive his share in the house, right? I can do those in a trust that I cannot necessarily do in a will. So again, trusts can do what wills cannot, can ensure that parents and grandparents are supported, that wives and daughters are supported, and they're often a tool to avoid hefty estate taxes. If you go to the next slide, we talk about death and taxes. Right now, this isn't an issue because the One Big Beautiful Bill has changed it. So unless you have over $15 million or $30 million between you and your spouse, there are no death taxes. There's no estate taxes in the state of Texas. The only caveat here is if you are a U.S. citizen spouse. If you are not a U.S. citizen, then there may be some taxes that we should talk about. The next slide talks about what we talked about earlier, which is that financial power of attorney or that medical power of attorney, which is what happens if I'm incapacitated. If I cannot make decisions for myself, what happens? Who's going to make medical decisions for me? Who's going to make financial decisions for me? And then what can you do to protect yourself and your family, right? Designating a guardian for my minor children, right? Tells the court who you want to raise your children. And if your family, let's say, is not here in the Houston area, or they can't get to my house in 30 minutes, we will designate a short-term guardian who can get to my house in 15 minutes and stay with my kids until my family can come from a different state, right? Designate a guardian for myself. If I should need a guardian, who do I want to take care of me physically, and who do I want to manage my estate, manage my assets? That financial power of attorney or that durable power of attorney, which is who can make financial decisions for me if I'm incapacitated. That medical power of attorney, again, who makes medical decisions for me if I can't make them for me, as well as my living will, which tells my loved ones What are my wishes? If I have a terminal condition and the doctors are like, you are not going to survive past this, what do I want to happen? I don't want chemotherapy in that situation. I don't want to be put on a ventilator. I want to be let to die as gently as possible and as quickly as possible. I only have a few more slides. The next one talks about non-probate transfers. And this is what we were talking about earlier, when if you have spouses that own everything jointly, that becomes a non-probate transfer. Non-probate, probate is again that court process. So these are transfers that happen outside of court, right? So if you have joint ownership with right of survivorship or tenancy by the entirety, that transfers outside of court. If I have a POD or a TOD, a payable on death or a transfer on death on my bank account, then that again passes outside of probate. I can use a death certificate and my family can get access to those assets. Anything that you have put into your trust is also a way to go outside of probate. The last couple slides talk about a waqf or endowments. Endowments are a means of support for our fellow Muslims and our Muslim organizations. And if we have these waqf set up, you do not have to do fundraising constantly and all the time. And these are sadaqah jariyah. These are abwab al-bir. These are the doors to goodness. These are ongoing charities that we can set up. And if you look on the next slide, subhanAllah, they've been used for thousands of years in Islamic history in very creative ways. Not just our masajid and not just our Islamic schools, but also our hospitals, mental health facilities. Farm animals, once they're old and they can't work on the farm, people used to have grazing land where they could come and literally just retire on the grazing grounds, right? For students, for research, for servants, if they had accidentally broken something, instead of that coming out of their pay, they could go to a waqf and they could get reimbursed for that item so that they can buy it for the homeowner, for the person who they were working for. Older people, right? People that don't have families. These are all ways that in Islamic history that waqfs have been used that we need to be doing, that we need to be setting up, we need to be going ahead. And the last thing I'll talk about is just some takeaways, some broad takeaways. First, our children are our most important assets. We have to make sure that we are intentional in taking care of things so that they are taken care of, right? We know that the first hadith in all of the hadith book is إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ, right? Things are done by their intentions. Estate planning is something that we have to intentionally do and take care of so that our children and our loved ones are all taken care of, and so that we are taking care of our obligation to Allah. Our endowments are an essential part of our religion and something that we need to safeguard the future of our institutions and our children, right? Because we want to have them to have their masajid, to have their schools, so they can come and have places to go. Wills do not avoid probate, and probate can be a long, public, and costly process. Living trust will bypass that court process and allows for privacy, immediate access, and control. Reviewing all of your assets has to be a part of your estate planning conversation, because you want to make sure that Department of Unclaimed Property does not receive any of our assets. And finally, estate planning requires intentional action. Planning keeps you in control, keeps you informed, and gives you huge cost savings in the long run. And the state of Texas's plan is not ideal for anyone, not for our families, not for our children. So we have to be intentional about creating that. And then inshallah, after Salah, we can meet and talk a little bit more about how you can receive services. Again, the easiest way is going to my website, abdullahoffice.com, and scheduling a free 30-minute consultation. So if you have questions about this, feel free to go to the website and schedule a free consultation. And I'm happy to sit down and chat with you. I do have business cards and some flyers up here, and I will be available after Salah if people have any questions. Inshallah, we can answer any questions that folks have. Jazakumullah khair. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.